I want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers and Chuck Fletcher's leadership during free agency. I think it was pretty successful. Sure, maybe they could have done a little bit better in some areas, but I do want to commend them. I made an video about this earlier, where the Flyers paid a high price, but they achieved something potentially great and also potentially franchise changing. It started off with a big trade for Ryan Ellis, a guy who, quite frankly, was the missing link that this team really needed. The team was desperately missing a top pairing defender, especially since Matt Niskanen left. Ryan Ellis coming over here, while the cost was high, and again, I'll continue to say that the cost was high for everything, and you can see that around the league. Costs from a majority of trades were high. Costs from a majority of signings and free agency were high. And that's why I love his free agency, and I'll get into that. But the Ryan Ellis move nailed down the top pairing. It's the best top pairing the Philadelphia Flyers have had in a very, very long time, probably since Chris Pronger has been here, but realistically since Kimmo Timonen's been here, who's one of the best veteran long-stay defensemen that this franchise has had, outside of like Eric Desjardins of the modern era, for real. Timonen highly undervalued for his defensive capabilities, as well as his two-way game. And Ryan Ellis, I think, brings something similar. More offensive, maybe not as physical defensively, but we'll see. Timonen always played much larger than his size and did a great job nullifying the opposition's best players. So really interesting in that front. So first he starts with that. Then he makes a controversial move to move Shane Gostisbehere. It's a trade that stings, because reality is Ghost is going to go over there to Arizona and he's going to put up points. Maybe he'll still be flawed defensively in some ways, but realistically, they're going to get a lot more value out of him than that trade seems. Like, they didn't actually trade for a guy who's going to be sitting in there. He probably won't be playing bottom pairing for them. Realistically, he'll probably be playing top four, probably top power play, especially with OEL now leaving. So again, a hard trade to stomach in a lot of ways, but it's important to remember it is a second-round pick. They're valuable, but they're not a guarantee that this second-round pick player is going to be something great. As we can see with somebody like Robert Haig, who was a second-round pick. He was initially ranked in the first round. It's not that you're necessarily going to miss these picks, but not hit on them. But there's no guarantee that this guy is going to be something even comparable to Shane Gostisbehere. So you move that, and that's why they take full salary. There's nothing retained there. You move the 7th round pick, which is not nothing, right? But a 7th round pick is the same thing as having to bring in a guy through free agency, right? I'm talking about a younger guy, or a 7th round pick is a guy you really you can bring him in through free agency, and it's not something that the organization can't replace. And you can get 7th round picks back, right? So we can kind of call that one a wash, but it's a high price to pay. Then comes the move for Ristolainen. Ristolainen comes in. He's a controversial trade, though I have a feeling that probably won't be one once the season starts. Like, I think most people probably forget about the first round pick that we lost. It is a high pick, but at least it's in a weaker draft. Like, if you're going to take a measured risk like that, do it the right way. The Flyers still are missing 2 second round picks, right, for this upcoming draft in 2022 and 23. So they'll probably have to recuperate, because those will be stronger drafts. But again, you gave up the first round pick in a year where you probably could afford to, and your team really, really has a lot of depth. Realistically, the guy you would have been drafting would have been ready in, 3 years? So Ristolainen comes in here. Here's your replacement for Phil Myers. He's a guy with similar skill sets. I would say more physical than Phil Myers, but again, that big mammoth size, the skating ability, the puck moving. So we kind of get our Phil Myers back, even though he'll be more expensive. But that's what that trade looked like to me, right? Now you get Phil Myers back, who's more experienced, who's been overused, probably should have never been a number one guy in Buffalo to begin with, right? That's like throwing in Travis Sanheim into a top pairing. The kid's really good, but you throw him in the top pairing, he's not going to have the best of nights. So you look at the overall results of that, and you think about that, right? So this trade of a first, a second, and a seventh, you move over quite a bit to get what you need out of Buffalo. You got Ristolainen. He gives you that nasty edge that this team really lacked. So at least you're moving out high-value assets. You're getting older, though. You're getting more refined, and you're filling in that need of the back end, which is very, very important, especially if you're going to have young forwards or undersized forwards. You need your defense to be the strength of your team. We saw what Montreal was able to do with that. We see what other teams are able to do with that. It's just, if you're going to invest in this type of investment, it's the way to do it. Let's be honest, it's the way to do it. You got a guy in Carter Hart who is hopefully your future franchise goaltender. I still believe him to be that. So why would you not invest in shoring up the defense to make sure you're not pushing down on guys like Provorov and hurting people's confidence like Carter Hart? You also have Sandstrom and Ustamenko, right? You have young goalies in the system. You want to give them a stable system to play in. So bringing those guys in, I know a lot of people are laughing at Ristolainen. I think that will go away pretty quickly. I do not like using analytics in context of one team and then bringing it to the next. I'd say new slate for him, and we'll see how he does here. He has all the skill sets to succeed here, so Ristolainen, good addition. Then comes the big trade, right? Maybe, I don't think it's the biggest of the three, right? But it's just as big as the other three addition players, right? And then you're moving Jake Voracek, who's been a staple here, who will finish as one of the best flyers of all time, despite what people want to say. At least offensively, he's more of a one-way player, but he did have some decent defensive play here as well, and he's one of the best passers that this organization has ever seen. His puck possession numbers, while he's a turnover machine, people say, are about average with most puck possession players, so he's never really that, even though people can be frustrated with him. They'll just pick somebody else to be frustrated with next year. I mean, it's typically what people do. But Cam Atkinson comes in. He's more of a two-way player. He's a guy with a shot. He's a shooter's mindset. He's obviously got a great personality if you're following him online. And, this is something the Flyers have lacked. Now, they get a little bit smaller in that sense, but again, the kid plays, the guy, I don't want to call him a kid, the guy plays big, and that's definitely going to help. And it kind of, it solidifies the team at least a little bit more with roles. This team is very heavy on playmakers, right? So now that trade is in the works. You got your culture change. You got another leader coming in. Jake Voracek will probably do well in Columbus, especially playing with Line A. It'll probably help set him up. I wouldn't be surprised if people kind of look back at that and be like, oh, should we really trade Voracek? It's irrelevant now. I say this all the time, and you got a good asset in return, so it's not like you should be crying over spilled milk. So we move forward to free agency, and this has been it's hard for me to say it's an A or an A plus because time will tell, but it's not an A because let's start with the goaltending, right? So as I record this, Sanheim and Carter Hart have not been signed yet. They have extending qualifying offers, but they have not been signed. Having said that, Martin Jones has been signed. Now, Martin Jones started off very strong in San Jose when he first went over there, and that was in his late 20s. Now he's in his early 30s. Their numbers have dropped off significantly, and this is kind of what I was talking about. Now, while that defense has some big names on it, Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, these guys are great defenders. Two of the three that I named are about average defensively. Erik Karlsson is not an exceptional defensive defenseman in any respect. The reason he won those awards is because of his offensive play, his ability to move the puck, and I would say same with Brent Burns. Now, while they're good players, that is not a defensive structured team, and as you can see, the team's defense dropped off, lost leadership, and the team play went down, and Jones' play got worse. If you look at Carter Hart last year and Brian Elliott, do you guys really think that they're bad goalies? Like, do you think that their numbers represent their talent? So, again, I'm not saying Martin Jones is better than, high expectations. I would say keep expectations low for sure. That way you're not upset. But realistically, if you can play well around a goalie, you can make him better. you can give him the right system to play better. And with the investment in the defense, I think there is a potential to do that. Maybe he wasn't the Flyers' number one guy. Maybe it was Braden Holtby, who also comes with his own question marks, dealing with kind of similar situation as his game dropped, kind of dropping off. He's also a little bit older. There might have been some other guys that maybe we were more interested in, but a $2 million price for Martin Jones, it allows you to, worst comes to worst, you send him to the minors. And you lose $1 million on his cap hit. Probably not going to happen, but it's also possible to bring in another guy of similar caliber, of number 3 guy, and not have to rely on Sandstrom and Ustimenko, both guys who are high talent and could come in and take Jones' spot by the end of the year, for all we know. But Martin Jones, I think, will be fine. He's shown to have moments where he's excelled, and his best seasons have been under Kim Dillabaugh, outside of, I believe, in San Jose. He had an amazing season with them. But again, kind of going back to the LA Kings connection there, Jonathan Bernier was a guy we were rumored. Again, Kim Dillabaugh, Jonathan Bernier, people were very low on him until he went to Steve Yzerman's team, which, again, Yzerman has a tendency to do that. So hopefully we can revitalize Jones's career. But I think it's a good signing. We didn't spend a lot to get him here. We spent less on him than we would have even Brian Elliott at a certain point. But it replaces Elliott, and it's a younger age. And it's a guy that, if he rebounds, this could be a guy that we trade at the trade deadline and get assets in return for him if one of the other goaltenders kind of steps up. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's here for the year. But again, I think it's worth being excited about. And I understand the hesitancy, but it's very difficult to take these contextual analytics and these contextual statistics and bring them over to a new team. So often do we see that is not the case. Depends on your role, depends on the system in front of you. And I wouldn't say V's the best coach for goaltenders and their numbers. Having said that, this is a very deep defense, and I want to get into the next move here. And this is bringing over Keith Yandle and under $1 million. Now, Keith Yandle is essentially a Shane Gostisbehere type. I would say he used to have a high ceiling, offensive defenseman, used to be a speedster, big shot, big pass, execution. Leadership ability, though, has worn an A several times in his career. And he's a guy that obviously had a lot of interest. And with the buyout, the Flyers were able to bring him here at a fraction of the cost. Now, he has a no-trade clause, so he's not going anywhere. You're not moving him out for an asset. But what's the worst that happens with a guy like Keith Yandle? You waive him and he decides to retire if he's upset about it, or he plays in the minors. That's really the worst case scenario, and probably not going to happen considering he still produced last year. And you're asking him to come in here and play a bottom pairing role, which is what we had Shane Gostisbehere doing last year. So you're essentially replacing Gostisbehere with an older, more mature player. It's pretty wise. And with his relationship to Kevin Hayes, I believe Cam Atkinson as well, you're bringing in a guy who's going to be liked immediately. Again, to avoid some of these spirals that we had last year, you're bringing in another veteran presence that gives you Ellis, Ristolainen, who's in his mid-20s, a little bit older than Myers with more experience, but also a very tough, gritty guy. You're bringing in Yandle, that is another veteran. You have Braun here. That means Provorov and Sanheim. That's like your youth, right? And then you have Ristolainen, who's kind of in the same area, a little bit older than both. But also, you're bringing in 3 vets, 3 mid-20 guys. That's a really nice age group for a defense. I love the signing of Yandle. There's really no risk. And think about what we signed Gustafsson for. We gave him $3 million for a guy who's, I'm not going to knock him too much, but he's worse than Yandle. So you're getting Keith Yandle at a fraction of the cost. There's really no risk there. And I have to say thank you to Kevin Hayes for doing that. But really solid signing by Fleur and Fletcher. Without a doubt, that one is a sneaky good signing of a guy who will probably give us 30, maybe 40 points this year. And it gives us even more power play options. Last year, we were relying on Provorov to do everything. Now, Ristolainen plays the power play. Ellis plays the power play. Sanheim plays the power play. Yandle plays the power play. Everybody outside of Justin Braun and Sam Morin can play the power play. And that doesn't include Cam York, and it doesn't include Igor Zamula. Right? So it's like you got a bunch of puck movers. You have a bunch of options. It means you can also resist the temptation to overplay a young kid in top power play when he's not ready. You don't have to rely on Sanheim to jump up now. You don't have to put Provorov out there for 25 minutes, playing him on the power play as well. You can give that role maybe to Ryan Ellis this time around. Though I do have a sneaking suspicion that Provorov is going to have a career year, so I wouldn't get too comfortable with the idea he's going to play less minutes. He probably will play maybe slightly less minutes, but overall, it'll be kind of a lion's share, and I do expect them to still rely heavily on him, just hopefully not 25 minutes a night. Hopefully he's more of a reasonable 23 minutes a night, and we don't have to constantly overuse him all the time. So that Keith Yandle signing is awesome. Then let's get into the next guy. And this one I think a lot of people don't like because, quite frankly, offensively, he's not going to give us much. And you should know that already going into this. And this is Nate Thompson. And he's come back. He's played here for some time. Nate Thompson's an interesting guy because he's not my top choice to come in fourth line center. But I've been saying this for a while. They had to bring in a veteran to be able to play that fourth line center role. Like you can put Scott Law in the third line. You can put Frost there. And obviously Scott Lawton's a very good fourth liner. We don't really want him playing there. If he has to, fine. But realistically, Nate Thompson is just going to be that Pierre-Edouard Bellemare guy for us. He's got good size. He's got decent skating for especially a guy his age. He's in very good shape. He'll be used consistently all the time. He costs almost nothing at $800K. So again, no risk there. Worst comes to worst, you drop him to the minors if he doesn't have it anymore. I don't think that's going to happen. But he's a guy that really is going to be relied upon to block shots, to take a lot of the brunt of the pain. And he's older. He's 36 years old. We talked about this. People talk down on veterans. We need guys in the room who just slow the emotions down. Really, really do. And even a guy like Andrew McDonald, who we never really liked as a fan base, right? That he never really gave it to us from a talent standpoint. He was a mentor to a lot of these young guys, and Shane Gostisbehere had his best seasons here with him. Provorov even played well with AMAC being here, and AMAC withstood all of the hate. They booed him in the home opener, our own fans, and the guy kept chugging away. And I see Nate Thompson as not an AMAC, right? But it's a guy, it's like no matter what's going to happen, there's nothing that's going to get under this guy's skin. And not only that, he can punch people in the face too if we need him to, right? He'll stick up for people. He'll fight. He'll drop the gloves. He'll take the block shots. He'll take the face off. He'll take the consistent defensive zone starts where he knows he's not going to get any numbers. He's a happy guy. He's a great role player. Sure, I'd like somebody a little bit better. I mean, Ryan Getzlaf was out there. He's obviously not leaving his home. I could see him getting traded for some assets for Anaheim. Quite frankly, I think it's a good signing for them. Ryan Dzingel is a guy I was pretty interested in. He can play all three positions. Signed a little bit more than Nate. But, there might have been some other options as well. But Nate Thompson is a guy who we know already that we like him. We know AV likes him. And I think with the amount of talent the Flyers already do have, again, Giroux, Hayes, JVR, Atkinson, Konechny, Couturier, Lawton, Lindblom, that doesn't Joel Farabee, Morgan Frost, that doesn't include Lazinski, Wade Allison. Again, could we use another elite player? Sure, that could still happen at some point. But the Flyers have enough depth on the wings for sure, to the point where if Lindblom starts on the fourth line, that's a travesty. But, we have enough wingers for sure to compete. We have enough center depth at this point to at least come at teams wave after wave. And if Frost finally makes that jump, which again, he's 22 years old, he has a recovering injury, but the kid is lights out speed, lights out playmaking ability. If he can elevate his two-way game, and again, we can take those defensive starts away from him with Nate Thompson being here, with Kevin Hayes being available, right? We can give them more of the defensive starts and then tailor Morgan Frost's line to him, throw some veterans around him. Maybe Oscar Lindblom plays with Morgan Frost because Lindblom is very good defensively if he's fully recovered from cancer. You throw him on the line with somebody like Morgan Frost and then, name somebody else, maybe Wade Allison on the right-hand side. You have some really nice options there. It's going to get interesting. It's going to get very interesting. I mean, Joel Farabee can play both sides of the ice as well. So, we don't know exactly what these lines are going to look like, but Joel Farabee is a young guy who plays way above his age group and has maturity in two-way play. So now you take that group and you really fill in that back end, that defense, And then you have your two goalies still. I would say that's the biggest question mark we have going into next season. But with the defense being refined, the question mark of the goaltender becomes less of a question mark. Because if you play well defensively, if you do, and again, Nate Thompson helps with that too. If you play well defensively around this team, everybody should see a boost in play. Somebody like Claude Giroux, less hard back checking, a guy we could also slot in the middle if we have to, right? Kevin Hayes allows him to be a little more risky, plus the injury, that obviously slowed him down. Sean Couturier, and also we have to re-sign Couturier, right? Giroux will probably be here for the rest of his career. I don't think he has any interest in going anywhere, unless, we're way out of the playoffs. But Couturier is up for a big contract, probably get $9 million a year. So this is a nice incentive for him to want to stay here. Is all of a sudden now he's got a really deep defense behind him. And quite frankly, if you look at that D, it's probably the deepest in the division. We'll see how Ellis and Provorov turn into a pairing. That could be the best pairing in the division by the end of the year. And I know that might be a controversial statement to some people. I know Dougie Hamilton signs in New Jersey, and they obviously have Subban, they have Smith, they have some really good young defenders over there. They obviously just got Hughes as well, Luke Hughes. He's probably not going to play for them yet, from my understanding. But again, Ivan Provorov and Ryan Ellis is the best pairing that this team has had in a while. And Ellis is not an old man. He's 30, right? So you're talking about two guys who are legit top pairing now. You're talking about Sanheim and Ristolainen. Ristolainen will help Sanheim with the physicality and the toughness. We have Morn, who has that in stride, and paying almost nothing for him. We still have Cam York, which we haven't even tested at the NHL level. But now you have Yandel and Braun. If that's your bottom pairing, come on, that's fantastic. That is a very good 6 group. And I'm just commending him and commending Chuck Fletcher here for his aggressiveness and to do it the right way. They went aggressive with the trades and then went safe with the free agents. And that's the right way to do it. And again, I tweeted immediately after that trade for Ellis. It's not a trade I would make. I don't love moving a second overall pick. And Phil Myers, a guy who, again, is a Ristolainen type, if you think about it, what his value in a trade would have been, especially at his cost, his salary. We moved a lot to get Ryan Ellis. We really did. I mean, you think about it, it's probably 2 first-round picks and a player for Ryan Ellis. That's fine as long as the player is legit, and the player is legit. He was my favorite player outside of Roman Josi to take from the Nashville Predators. And obviously, there's Phil Forsberg. I love him too. And they have some other names would be, obviously really interesting. But it's a move that this team needed, So it hurts me here. From a risk management standpoint, I'm more risk averse, but this is the way to take a risk. If you're going to sign Martin Jones, you give him $2 million a year. I know people think that's high, but I don't know what backup in the NHL with his reputation gets less than that. Yeah, his numbers were bad, but how well did his team play? It's not like they were lights out defensively. Devin Dubnyk didn't do well there either. No goaltender was doing well there. Again, I think the San Jose Sharks will rebound. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I still think they have plenty of talent there, but they have holes just like we did. The Flyers have filled their holes. And if you're going to have holes, it's best to have them, not having an elite goal scorer, right? That's a hole you can live with. And quite frankly, that might be a trade that comes in the future. Maybe the Flyers do go for Jack Eichel later. I don't know. I don't think so. But, again, James Van Riemsdyk is a goal scorer. Joel Farabee is the closest thing we have to a sniper outside of now Cam Atkinson. We have some shooters here. We have shooters on D. Ryan Ellis has got a fantastic shot, right? Ristolainen's got a pretty good shot for a defenseman as well. You have Provorov, who can get the puck on net as well as anybody. You have Sanheim, who's an offensive defenseman who's yet to find that full offensive game, which I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this year. You have Keith Yandel, who's a fantastic shot as well. All of a sudden, you have more shooters. You have more veterans. This is a team now built for the playoffs. So we'll see if they make any more moves. But, I don't want to grade it because it's going to take some time. And it's not a perfect offseason. You paid a lot. You didn't bring in the picture perfect pieces, but you brought in some really good ones. And maybe there's questions on Jones. Maybe Nate Thompson isn't offensive enough. But again, just think about your options. You still have Tanner Lazinski sitting in the wings. You still have other guys in we have other guys in the minors who might make some jumps. We have Connor Bunneman. I didn't even mention him. We don't know what kind of progress he's going to make. He's a pretty good prospect. He's already playing in the NHL at a very young age. What if he takes Nate Thompson's job just through sheer force next year? Nate Thompson just sits as an extra. That's not a problem. If Sam Morin sits as an extra, that's not a problem, right? He's 26 years old. He's getting to the point where without those injuries, I mean, this is still his development time, but these are risk-free moves that we're making. And I haven't even mentioned Albay Kubel, who I don't dislike, but I have been mentioning online that I would consider trading him. Not because he has no value, not because I don't want him on this team, but because he's a pest type of guy, but he's kind of replaceable, and he's young, and he has a good contract, and he's a restricted free agent, but he's also arbitration ready next year. And I don't know how much of a future he has on this team. So I would consider, we're missing some draft picks. We could have used some extra cap space. Is he a guy that we move out at some point this year? I don't know. It could happen. Not that I think that they're in any rush. I don't think the Flyers are in any rush. But outside of that, the Flyers also made some minor league signings. Adam Clendenning came over, and Nick Seeler, and I believe there's some other names as well. Zach Cooper was brought in as well. Let me see. There was a couple more guys here that I'm definitely forgetting. But there were a bunch of minor league. Matthew Gerald came in, and I thought there was one more. I'm probably forgetting him, so sorry. But realistically, the Phantoms have been shored up. Phantoms also have a bunch of young talent down there. Cam York is going to be an elite defender at the AHL level. He's going to be a high-end defender at the NHL level. You still have Wyatt Wiley down there. You still have Mason Millman, who's developing nicely. He was there too young. A lot of these guys are too young. Linus Hogberg is still here. Igor Zamula is past his first year. Now you add a guy like Clendenning, who's essentially a star at that level, and you bring him over for almost nothing, and he has NHL experience as well. So you're kind of just rotating in those veterans. You have plenty of talent. You still have guys who have an opportunity. Zayd Wisdom will still be here. Tyson Forrester, Elliot Denoyer will finally get in. He's definitely a role player type of guy. Wade Allison will probably start off in the NHL, but could start off in the minors as well, and he's too good for the minors, so he'll probably dominate that. Ali Lishko's coming over. He's already been playing with pros. He's a guy who probably can produce at the AHL level. Isaac Ratcliffe is a guy that we all forget about. This is probably going to be a big development year for him. I would not be surprised if he ends up being one of the best players on the Phantoms this year. He's slowly been getting better. He's always going to take longer. These big kids, they do take longer. They're not quicker just because they're bigger. You have Maxim Sushko, who showed some real promise. You have German Rubtsov, who's been playing against men already, and I think, quite frankly, probably will rebound this year for the Phantoms. He's a very confident kid. He's just kind of quiet, but if he came back over here, it means he wants to be here. He didn't have to be back here. He wants to be here. He wants his chance to make the NHL. And I wouldn't be surprised if he stays really late at camp and people are kind of like, why is Sushko or why is Rubtsov here so late? Because the coaches already like him. So Rubtsov is a guy who also competes with Noah Cates. I didn't mention him, right? Or Jackson Cates, sorry. A guy that came over later who'll probably be a pretty good AHL guy. Max Willman got a contract for being a good player. Ryan Fitzgerald's already good over here. And then obviously David Kosh is out. And then Linus Sandin, a guy in his mid-20s. He's a good AHL guy. I don't know if he's ever going to make it to the Flyers necessarily, but it's a good place to be in. Again, with Ustimenko and Sandstrom, both mid-20s type of guy, early mid-20s. This is a good place to be. I'd like to see if we can add a little bit more. If there's a big trade out there to make after all the craziness, I'd be interested to see what those options are as well. But so far, so good. Chuck Fletcher, you've done a good job. Good off season so far. I'm sure that people will complain about stuff. To me, again, just because I say I wouldn't make a move doesn't mean I completely disagree with it. I'm just, again, I've talked about this over and over again. The Niskanen trade, that's my kind of trade. You walk away from that trade with a smile on your face. You're like, I lost almost nothing. And I liked Gudas, but you lost nothing there. You lost money, but Niskanen was worth paying for. And if you really looked at his salary plus the $1 million we ate on Gudas, which is why we didn't move any prospects in that trade or picks. We paid Niskanen $7 million a year. That's more than we're paying Ryan Ellis, who's better. So it's interesting. It's an interesting place to be in. So Chuck Fletcher, good job, man. I mean, yeah, I think you sparked the fan base back, and I'm saying it again, rebounding was always within reach. Anybody who didn't think that, you were ignoring the level of assets within the organization. You only wanted the big names out there, and it doesn't work that way. It almost never works that way. Look at Toronto after getting Tavares. Look at San Jose after getting Carlson. You don't have to get the big name to improve. You don't have to give up everything like to get Seth Jones, which I still can't believe he got that much money. And again, he's a great defenseman, but like these guys are not Victor Hedman yet. And even Dougie Hamilton had a great year last year. Is he a $9 million defender? I thought he was getting 8, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'd rather have Provorov than Dougie Hamilton. And I'm paying Provorov significantly less at this point. So, it's an opportunity here to really ice together a good team. And we don't have any scary contracts. Like, people can say what they want about Drew's contract. I'll pay him that all day as long as he continues to do what he's doing. And it looks like him and Couturier will probably reverse contracts there. Creech will get the 9, and then Drew will probably get the 5 mil, probably for some term there as well. Maybe he'll get a little bit more than that, actually. But Flyers will have to make some moves. So good stuff, Chuck Fletcher. Way to get the fan base excited. And again, I'm excited. Let's hope you guys are too.